And what we have in front of us is a revolution in the watch industry.
I love how you set the expectations low. This is a revolution.
And I was very like,
Oh,
it already, you said like, but you were right.
Ladies and gentlemen, the dress code is formal, the weather is hot in Geneva, and the man to my left is one of the most exciting conductors on the scene at the moment, Mr. Lorenzo Viotti. He is going to tell us about this watch and about your relationship with Bulgari. What are we doing here? What is this watch in front of us? How are you connected to Bulgari?
So I'm very lucky to have started my, let's say, journey and also now musical journey with Bulgari a couple of years ago. And what we have in front of us is a revolution in the watch industry.
I love how you set the expectations low. This is a revolution.
No, absolutely. Usually when you have a piece of art like that who can sound the time, it's kind of an information of what time is it. But now it's much more of an emotion of what time is it. Mm-hmm. And I think that relation of playing with music, emotion, technicity, and playing with time was something like unthinkable a couple of years ago when we started to have that conversation with the team. And 2 years later, it's here.
This is a Grand Sonnerie piece. This has the ability to play a melody that you have composed. How did this happen, and what does it mean to compose the melody of a minute repeater?
First of all, when they asked me to compose a melody, I thought I had total freedom. So I composed like a 7 notes, 8 notes melody. I sent via WhatsApp. I was super happy, and I received the text back. It's 3 notes or 4 notes. No, and then I thought about keywords that the team gave me to get inspired, and I also about the history of the brand.
What were the keywords?
Break the rule.
Break the rule.
Like to be modern. But what does it mean to be modern today, especially in an industry which is still very traditional, you know? Mm. It's a bit like my industry, classical music. How do we break the rule in this? And how do you break the rule in something that demands so much like technicity and rules, you know? You cannot go beyond what is possible technically. Mm-hmm. So I took 2 intervals and I disturbed them with a special note, the tritone.
Tritone interval.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Which in music was actually interpreted as the diabolus in musica. For a certain amount of time, it was even forbidden for composers to use that interval because it's just sounded wrong to our ears. Mm-hmm. But there is nothing more beautiful than something that's disturbed.
Because does it resolve?
It can resolve into something, let's say, more round, but it can also go in a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. So the possibility of ending that interval are enormous. And I thought, okay, we have 4/4 of an hour. For each of them, I'm gonna put different symmetry of notes. So when we arrive to the last one, we get the tension of that note would resolve into the full time.
And now let's resolve this story by zooming in on the watches and talking about the details that make them special. This is not the first Grand Sonnerie from Bulgari, to be clear. The brand has had the Bulgari Octo Grande Sonnerie with retrograde displays and a tourbillon from 2010, and the Bulgari Octo Roma Grand Sonnerie Perpetual Calendar, introduced 5 years ago at Basel World in 2019. Both were celebrated for their high level of complication and distinct Bulgari aesthetic and style. This watch, however, is, like we said, the first to have its chiming melody actually composed by a maestro like Lorenzo. Rather than the delicate consonant melodies we're used to hearing from minute repeaters, these watches revolve around the infamous tritone. Now, this is some music trivia for you, because such is the mythology behind this interval, which is a pair of notes 3 whole steps apart, that a popular misconception was spread, saying it was banned by the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. Upon hearing the tritone, you can understand why it earned the nickname the Devil's Interval. The ratio between the frequencies is complicated, which our brains interpret as dissonant, and that creates tension within the music. Now, this watch, the Bulgari Octo Roma Grande Sonnerie Tourbillon, is supposedly Bulgari's most complicated watch ever created, with the Sonnerie passage automatically sounding the hours and quarters as time elapses, and repeating the hours, quarters, and minutes on demand thanks to a total of 4 gongs and hammers. The Bulgari Octo Roma Carillon Tourbillon is only slightly simpler than the Grande Sonnerie, which feels so wrong to say out loud, using 3 gongs for its hours, quarters, and minutes repetition. Although there are plenty of minute repeating watches that display their gongs and hammers from open-worked dials, these Octo Roma models have a distinctly modern feel. The dials have been drilled and milled with holes and slots radiating from the centre, almost akin to a speaker grill. Of course, the gently rotating tourbillons are eye-catchers too, and the Grande Sonnerie and Carillon are powerhouses on the wrist thanks to their respective 45mm titanium and 44mm rose gold cases. The Octo Finissimo minute repeater carbon may be the most quote-unquote traditional minute repeater from a movement standpoint because of its 2 gongs and hammers. Aesthetically, however, it's a different beast entirely. The 40mm carbon case is somehow only 6.85mm thick, 0.05mm thinner than the time-only carbon gold. What? How? Anyway, the dial looks like a forgotten concrete relic of a deserted city slowly crumbling into the void. If the tritone represents auditory tension, then the Octo Finissimo minute repeater carbon is its physical embodiment. Well played, Bulgari. Play on, Lorenzo. Now, having met Lorenzo Viotti, I have to say this would connect me to the watch in a very powerful way. He has enormous charisma, enormous talent, and this incredible physical presence that you can only really sense when you're in the room with him, which I'm sure if anyone has seen him conduct, you can attest to. What do you think of this watch? Would a composed melody tip you over to buying a minute repeater when perhaps a more generic or classical melody would just make it part of the traditional set? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching and listening to Time+Tide, and we'll see you soon.